Hello, welcome. I'm Christopher Taylor of Sovereign Harmony. Welcome back to another YouTube where I'll be going over kind of where we're at energetically speaking. And I like to use a lot of astrology. If you've seen some of my other videos here on my channel, you note that I use astrology quite a bit as my guide. But mostly what I want to do today is focus especially on what's leading up to this US election in November. So today is September 7th, 2012. It's Friday, September 7th. And according to some, energetically speaking, these windows, these kind of August 8th, 8-8, September 9th, 9-9, October 10th, 10-10, etc., leading up to the end of 2012 are apparently significant gateways of some kind. So we have one coming up here Sunday, 9-9. So, pay attention to it. Just kind of get a sense, a feel. Is it a heavy energetic day? Does it feel kind of like there's a weird energy going on? Be aware, be conscious. I'm not sure personally what to make of that, but I just wanted to at least, put that out there because I hear that from different groups and different people in multiple places. So I wanted to at least put it out there for you. But anyway, today again, September 7th, Friday, and I want to look at the next couple of months, really all the way through November. I'm not going to talk anything about December 21st, 2012 or anything about that. In fact, I won't talk about anything really past about Thanksgiving or so. So we're taking this from about Labor Day to Thanksgiving. And that's what we're gonna focus in on what's happening astrologically and just generally what I feel intuitively is coming through me as far as how I think things are going to play out relative to what I see. So you can agree with me, disagree with me, take the best, leave the rest. That's the best approach with any kind of information coming in. And if you've watched my videos, I spoke back in May and June regarding those eclipses that we had in Gemini, Sagittarius. Okay, those eclipses actually, we'll touch on this, will get highlighted here in October. So the energy for those eclipses was established in May and June, but the actual infusion of it in the world happens here in October. So this idea of information flooding in and a whole new game plan coming through as we have to discard old ways of thinking to make room for what is the truth. That has always been the truth, but we just didn't have it in front of our faces. Kind of like, seeing the ankles underneath the curtain on The Wizard of Oz. Once you see the ankles, you really can't buy into the whole wizard act anymore. Once you realize it's just the guy behind a curtain. And so it's that kind of energy that, those eclipses I talked pretty heavily about back in May and June. And there was a lot of energy going on back at that time. And so I have some links down below to those videos. You can feel free to look at the more details there. I'm not going to get into the details that I get into in those videos. But generally speaking, that energy is coming up, which is another reason why I want to talk today. So, as we sit here in early September, what we've just kind of passed last week was what's called a shift of the nodes of the moon. Okay? The nodes of the moon, they're kind of a weird thing to talk about. They're not real physical objects. They're points in space that kind of mark where the moon and sun lines cross relative to the Earth. It's confusing. I don't have to get into how it works. But when we talk about eclipses and the Earth and the sun and the moon are all exactly lined up, well, that has a lot to do with where that node is, where that node is located. And so those nodes back through the zodiac, so we have the north node in one end, the south node in the exact opposite end, and it backs through the zodiac, and it changes signs about once every 18 months or so. So back in early March of 2011, so about a year and a half ago, we had the entrance into Gemini Sagittarius with the north node going into Sagittarius, the south node into Gemini. What happened here last week was that we backed up, and now the north node is in Scorpio, and the south node is in Taurus, okay? This is a different energy, and this will be with us all the way until the spring of 2014, okay? So we've got a little while to go with this. And this is a very different energy than Gemini Sag. Gemini Sag is very unconcrete. It's information, it's flexibility, it's change, it's ideas without much solid form to it. Whereas Scorpio, Taurus is an energy, Taurus being form and structure and order and what we're used to. And Scorpio, where the north node is where we're headed. This is the change. rapid change, disintegration of the forms to make way for new forms. That's kind of what Scorpio is all about. So you can see the dichotomy there, Scorpio, Taurus. One is about the form, one is about the disintegration of forms to make room for a new form. And what we're heading toward is this disintegration so we can make room for the new forms. And Taurus is also an energy that's heavily involved with the basics, things like food, money, okay? These kind of things, security. These are the issues on a worldwide basis that are going to really come up. And it's really interesting to note as we get into the eclipse seasons, because the first eclipses that will happen in this realm, the Taurus Scorpio, will actually be eclipse in Scorpio here in November 13th, okay? But then we'll have that followed up by an eclipse in Gemini. So we're having an eclipse in the following signs of Gemini, Sagittarius still as we get a new sign in. So there's a transition happening in that energy, if you can think of it that way, this November. And then from here on, when we have the spring eclipses and next fall's eclipses, they'll all be in the Scorpio-Taurus zone, okay? Whereas like the last two eclipses were both in a Gemini-Sag zone. And so this is our transition area. And like I said, we're transitioning from these ideas to more concrete changes, concrete disintegrations and reformations, okay? And what we're going to be talking about are issues of security, okay? So this whole, lots of ideas, lots of information has flowed through to the general public regarding things like the truth about money, the Federal Reserve, for example. Ron Paul's been huge in getting this word out there, but it's not just him. This is becoming pretty common knowledge. It's like, there's a couple of rungs of this before we actually change the system. It's kind of awareness, and then awareness that what's going on isn't in our best interest, and then, a decision to do something about it, and then we actually do something about it. So we're starting to enter the realm where we're actually going to do something about it. We're done getting the info. The info's here. We get it, okay? And a big part of the, the big finale of this inflow flux, I think, is going to come here in October, when those eclipses get triggered by Mars. Mars will hit the point, either at the point or opposing the point of those two eclipses, the one that was on May 20th at 0 degrees Gemini, and the one on June 4th, which is at about 14 degrees Sagittarius. So both get hit in October. Interesting to note as well that the eclipse is coming up in November 13th, at about 21 Scorpio, and then November 28th, which is at about 6 degrees Gemini. They'll both get highlighted here from late September into October as well. So we have, we have a setup here that, it's September 7th right now. But by the time we get to the last week of September, the last couple of weeks, really the last 10 days of September, we're going to be pretty active. We're going to talk about this. This is when things start really picking up, okay? I talked about things picking up in late August when Mercury went direct, and it was out of its shadow and everything else. And it's true, things have started to come together. Life is starting to get a little hectic. But when it comes to what we're about to be heading toward, we're about to rapidly shift into this zone here, late September through late November. That 2-month period is just enormous for massive change quickly, okay? And it's all this sense of buildup that's been happening since the spring of 2012. May, June, those eclipses. Regulus entered Virgo. If you look below at the link to that, Regulus entering Virgo and the Uranus-Pluto square, all this kind of stuff, this energy is coming back up. Now, again, speaking of the Uranus-Pluto square. So if you remember, Uranus is squaring Pluto, and it will be all the way until April 2015. So this is a 3-year period where we're making very important decisions, okay, on a collective basis that are going to ripple down the line for decades, all right? And these decisions are according to issues that were planted in the 1960s. Pluto-Uranus conjunct, big social upheaval happened back then, and now we're making some final decisions based on what we know. Back in at that time, we recognized our power on this planet. That's a real way of looking at it. Those planets were conjunct in Virgo. It's all about planetary awareness. Now with Regulus in Virgo, the power structure, again, I check this video down below for more details on Regulus entering Virgo. The power structure has now shifted. For the last 2,000 years, the power structure, we had Regulus and Leo, all masculine. Especially the last 70 years of that, late 1930s, right up through the first decade of the 21st century, we had the last degree of Leo, which was the most intense amplification, the most intense expression of that masculine masculine energy in terms of power. And this is where we had nuclear weapons, so we had worship of sporting icons, worship of Hollywood icons, all this kind of thing. Now we're starting to take our power back, our creative power back, because Leo's about creativity. So when that energy, that Regulus was in Leo, it was all about dividing our power, giving our power away, and leaving none for ourselves. Now we're starting to even the playing field with power, but now with Regulus in Virgo, there's a real sense of power being structured according to purpose, need, health, perfection. Virgo's a lot about perfection, not the noun, but the verb perfection, to perfect, okay? So everything that's in the realm of perfecting, which is the realm of health, okay? We just talked about the fact that Taurus Scorpio, the nodes that we're entering into, we're going to start seeing some real concrete, tangible changes in our food systems. Look at how many documentaries have come out in the last, say, 3 to 5 years even, that more and more people are like, wow, I didn't realize that's how our food industry was structured. I didn't realize we were being held back from different choices in food and how we can nurture ourselves. So when it comes to health, when it comes to food, when it comes to money, there's a lot of awareness out there now because of that whole Gemini Sagittarius aspect. These eclipses the last year and a half have brought in the information. We have the information. Most of the general public has much more information for this election in 2012 than they've ever had before. Okay, and there's a stronger sense of entitlement to choose who we want to run us now, because there's a higher sense of knowledge, or a higher perception of knowledge, self-knowledge, that we know better of what's for us than some people who are the puppets for a couple of parties. Okay, so I'm going to talk all about this, the two-party system, how I see it kind of collapsing as we know it. And I say that under no uncertain terms. I don't mean that in a subtle way. I mean that I see the end of the two-party system as we know it. It will enter this election with kind of the assumption that it's going to go on the same way, but we won't see another presidential election with this two-party system the way we have it now. That is my hard prediction, okay? You can disagree, agree, whatever you want to do with that, but I'll get into the details about what's leading up to that. And I'm sorry I'm jumping around here a bit, but all this energy is kind of merging into one idea. And that idea is that we're in a very, we're in a very critical period of making decisions, concrete decisions, real changes to old systems that no longer work for us, because we now know they don't work for us, because we have the knowledge, information we didn't have before. Okay, so it comes in steps. We get the information, then we get the action, and we're entering action phase now. Okay, and that's really what this is all about, entering the action phase. And that Uranus-Pluto square I alluded to, the first square of 7 that will occur between June 2012 and April 2015. We had the first one in June. The second one comes up here in September, around, I believe it's like the 18th or 19th or whatever, right around the equinox, okay? So we have a lot of energy building up here. Like I said, late September into late November, this is our 2-month window of like, whoa, okay? Late September, we have Pluto going direct, all right, in Capricorn. So part of that Uranus-Pluto square, Pluto is in Capricorn. Pluto is only in Capricorn once every 200 and some odd years, okay? Pluto is in Capricorn 1760s, 1770s, in other words, American Revolution. So we're talking about disintegration of structures and rebirth of new structures. This is the idea of freedom. We're in this now. 2008 was actually when Pluto entered Capricorn for its latest round. It won't leave until 2024. So we're in it for about 16 years. We're only about 4 years into the 16-year period. And so the first part of that is disintegration of the old structures that are holding us back. Back in the 1700s, it was disintegration of the king and queen that were rulers of the new land, and it was the birth of freedom. Now we're disintegrating these old ideas, these old archaic like party systems that hold us back and remove us from our power. It was designed at the time in the late 18th century around the idea that information wasn't readily available. People weren't educated. People didn't have access to information. So we had to have constituents. We had to have representatives of the people. What we're entering now is a time period where the people can represent themselves. Period. We can hold forums. We can hold forums on issues and things, and we can come to consensus on issues. Not consensus on party lines, but consensus on issues. And then we can elect who personas, which person we think can best reflect our consensus. That's real democracy. That's where we're headed. That's the positive side of this. You know, when we talk about disintegration and change, you know, it can bring up a lot of fear because things have always been a certain way. What happens, though, is that there comes a time when the structure and the forms have to disintegrate and reformulate around a new appropriate way. So it's the essence that matters. The essence before was an essence of people that need to be guided by constituents and representatives. Now the essence is people are empowered. We're in our own authority. We can choose for ourselves. We have the information for ourselves. We're much better educated than we were before. Okay? And we have a better idea of our rights than back then. And so a form, a structure and a form to fit that, we now need that. We now need an appropriate form and structure to fit that essence, the essence which has changed. Okay? So it has nothing to do with the structure. We can let go of the structure. The old structure doesn't work anymore. It's for the old system. The new system requires a new structure. And we'll get into that a little bit more. But these are part of the decisions we're making in this Uranus-Pluto square, this 3-year period. And it makes sense that in September, here we go, Pluto goes direct in Capricorn. Time to make some changes, time to disintegrate some structures, time to face what needs to be disintegrated. Okay? So late September brings this up. All right? So, you know, what does that bring up? I don't know. Who knows what the details are going to be? But something's going to get brought up. Some ideas, some you know, real barriers to our empowerment, our now known empowerment, come up. And the people who now, a year after the Occupy movement, have an awareness, and if you see one of my first videos posted on this channel, is called Occupy You, the new agreement. And I just talk about the idea that, you know, this Occupy movement, everyone's judging it as not having any purpose, not having any concrete results. And it's true, but all we ever needed out of that, and I keep saying this, and I'm sorry if I sound like a broken record, but what we needed to get out of that, the message out of the Occupy movement was, we can go from a small group of people on Wall Street to 30 days later, which is what happened, mid-September to mid-October 2011, having the entire world having an Occupy movement. That's how quickly we can disseminate information and organize ourselves. We didn't know that before the Occupy movement. We might have had an idea that we had social media and all these outlets and that it was possible to mobilize ourselves and organize ourselves, but we didn't have the proof. What the Occupy movement gave us is the proof that we can connect and mobilize and organize in a very rapid fashion. So if we can do that on a worldwide basis in 30 days, imagine what the US can do, the United States people, when the election goes in a different direction, when the ankles reveal themselves on some level behind the curtain, and the people very rapidly spread the awareness of this around, okay? Again, we have a collective awareness we didn't have before regarding money, regarding health, regarding food. All these things that, on a consensus basis, I think we're all in agreement. There's no real party lines here. I think we all want the healthiest food possible for ourselves, our kids, and even our pets, you know? I think we all want, you know, options for healthcare, okay? I think we all want our freedom of choice on some level. You know, we all want certain things. There are ways that the power elite like to divide and conquer and like to convince us that we have to believe one thing, we have to neglect the beliefs of another. And it's really, we're becoming more aware on a collective basis, on an individual basis too, that I'm not that much different than my neighbor who is very different politically from me. We have a lot of the same values. You know, why are we enemies? Why? And there's a lot of realizations that we're not enemies. You know, and that's part of the Occupy movement too, is the 99% versus the 1%. It's kind of like, well, the Democrats and Republicans, you know, not that 99%, you can split up into Democrats and Republicans, you know, and we realize that we're all in the 99, you know, and so it's sort of awareness that really grew in us, and we've grown a lot in the last just couple of years. It's really amazing. I mean, I've been doing a lot of this like work with astrology and other energy for 4 or 5 years now. Pretty deep into it, but it's only the last like 1.5 years, 2 years that it's like, whoa, the general populace is really awakening, and it's really exciting. But that's where we're at right now, you see? And so September, as we roll through, we're going to have this Pluto-Uranus square. Pluto goes direct, late September. when it comes to Earth changes, okay, there's been a pretty particular pattern with earthquakes happening near the equinoxes for the last couple of years. This goes back to the Japan earthquake in March of 2011. There was the, it's eluding me right now, but you can go back, you can Google for yourself. It's called like the 188-day earthquake pattern or something like that. Google like 188-day earthquake pattern. You'll find information on it. It's pretty astounding how, 188 days plus or minus a day or two, but roughly within that zone, very strong earthquakes. The strongest of the earthquakes we've had, have happened in this time frame. And we're due for one here in late September 2012. So be very aware. It's already starting to build. Late August into early September, we've had a lot of rumblings. The earthquakes, there's been a lot more earthquakes, a lot more high-scale earthquakes than normal. Big clusters in Southern California, for example. Okay, Southern California is way overdue for a major earthquake. There's been an earthquake cluster here in the first couple of weeks, I should say late August, early September of 2012. Something could be building there. The entire Pacific Rim has been kind of playing hot potato with the strong earthquakes in the last couple of years, and it could be due for something around that time. Look for at least one, if not several, 8.0s or greater in that last couple weeks of September, and watch for it to just be all over the media, okay? I feel like this could literally be what starts some big talks about energy shifts on a worldwide the opening, the awakening, the connecting of people on certain levels that haven't been quite as out in the open with their idea of like the awakening times that we're in, and how we're all coming into our own authority, our own power, our own sovereignty. And this is what my whole idea of sovereign harmony is all about. The idea that we're coming into our own authority, we're claiming our own sovereignty, and through that sovereignty, we're going to be able to harmonize better. Peace has eluded us because we've been divided and conquered. We've been convinced that we have enemies, when the only enemies we really have are the ones that are convincing us that we have enemies. You see? And that we really, we're really aligned in a lot more ways than we think. And this is a lot of the realizations that have been coming. We're feeling a lot more together, and it's chaotic right now because we're changing. We're changing from a system of fear and protection to one of like, well, maybe I can trust. I always say, stop watching the news for 30 days. Take 30 days. Don't watch the news. It's like in the Matrix with the blue pill and the red pill. Like you take the blue pill, you go back to your life as normal. You don't even realize you ever were awakened. Take the red pill, you're awake forever. I took the red pill a long time ago. There's no way I go back to sleep. But there are ways to take the blue pill. But I think the power elite realize the only way for the blue pill to remain potent and to keep you asleep is you have to take it every day. Okay? If you get off the news, get off media outlets. People often coming back from vacations that don't get a chance to see what's going on in the world for a while feel disconnected and almost like, what's going on? Oh, I got to get back to reality. Then they get synced back into reality, but they don't realize that they're leaving reality. They were in reality when they were in their own space, their own sovereignty. When they were in nature, most vacations deal more with nature than our everyday lives. They were in reality. That camping trip, that's reality. When you come back to the Matrix, whatever you want to call it, this is the non-reality. And so it's like, but yet we feel comforted in getting reacquainted with our blue pill. Like, oh good, oh that feels good. Now I feel like I'm back. But I think what would happen, and this is where the power elite are stuck between a rock and a hard place, is that they can't really pull. With the Occupy movement showed us how easily we can get together and organize, right? Now it's kind of like the plug can never be pulled in terms of allowing us to connect, because then we know something's up, and then it's over. The jig is up. If like Facebook goes down for good, or all of social media, the internet goes down, the jig is up. Now we know someone's trying to keep us from connecting. So that can't happen. And so it's kind of like they have to keep the communication lines open, and the connection lines open. They just got to keep it filled with fear, keep it filled with the old ideas as much as possible. But what's happening is people are just like starting to see it as a joke. Like I look at this presidential election, and pretty much every election, more and more as I see them, more like a wrestling match. Where wrestling is fake, but the moves are real. There's a lot of real stuff going on in wrestling. But there's kind of a plan of action of how it's going to end, and who's going to win. And like the way I see it in this election, like I'll talk about it in just a second. I don't want to leap too far ahead, but I feel like it is pre-planned. And 4 years ago, I didn't think that. I do think that now. I do. It's coming more to my sense of reality, my sense of truth, that there's a puppet master there, but it's going to be revealed to us, and we're going to realize it. We're going to really take control of this. As we enter into early October, the first week of October is really shifty. Okay, we have Jupiter going retrograde. We have Saturn entering Scorpio. Saturn's been in Libra since late 2009. This is that whole situation of our relationships, learning how to relate more authentically, drawing our boundaries. Okay, we're ready. This is all part of that sovereignty idea. We're ready to harmonize more easily, to get along more easily, because we now have a better sense of our sovereignty, where our boundaries lie. And we have a better sense of confidence in the idea that I can believe something different than you and it can be okay. Instead of having to convince the other or having to convince ourselves that we're wrong or they're wrong in order for us to be okay. Being okay in disagreement. That's part of this as well. As Saturn enters Scorpio, now it's going to be time to really restructure the financial systems. Like I said, survival systems, food, all that kind of stuff, all this resource stuff. This really starts to come down in the next couple of years. So I feel like 2013, 2014, what we decide during this time period is just absolutely huge with where we're headed with regards to all of our systems that take care of us, our security systems, our 401ks, our retirement, our everything, our food, everything, okay? All of this is huge. All of this is coming up. All of this is on tap. Also in early October, though, on a positive note, right as Saturn enters Scorpio, it's going to join with Neptune and Pisces in a trine. This is a nice, easy aspect of Saturn, which is like structure and order and putting things together, and Neptune, which is like dreams, and it's in Pisces too, so it's like the collective dream. So this is really an opportunity for the collective dream to come together. Literally. And the fact that the United States of America has a Cancer sun, 4th of July is the birth date of the United States of America, so this is in Cancer, so Cancer gets lit up here. And, this could be a Pisces, Scorpio, and now Cancer. This completes the grand trine in water signs. So the United States especially has an opportunity to really have its people, its collective dream. When we're out of the illusion of division and conquering, and we're in our togetherness as a nation, coming together, coming together as one, a chance to come together. So October is like this flood of information, because again, Mars is triggering those eclipses. It's a flood of information that's been building for a while, so it's not really new information, but it's just the conglomeration of all that stuff that has been coming in. So like people have heard tidbits of this and that piece. It all starts coming together in October, just in time for the election, just in time. And with it comes the sense, this feeling that it's all coming together, you see? And there's a real sense, the way I look at October, if something happens in late September, early October, whether it's physical earth changes, like a lot of earthquakes that kind of wake people up and everything else, that could be part of it, but there are some real awakenings of like, what's tricking us, what's holding us back, what's disempowering us. And then a flood of information of, whoa, I kind of knew this, and now there's verification on it, just in time for an election, where these two pundits, basically, that represent their parties and don't really represent the people, suddenly have to be voted in by us. And what I see is a complete breakdown of the system as we know it, because of all the information that's flooding in, because of where we're at timing-wise. It is time to transition to a new system that will work for the people we are now, which is the people who are more informed, which is the people who are more empowered. Okay? We need a system to fit that, and our current system doesn't, and we're going to recognize that very quickly in this election. A very special piece of this election. Now we're into November. Mercury retrograde. I speak about Mercury retrograde a lot. Okay? This is a time period where we go over things. We redo, rethink, realign. Okay? It's time to go inward. It's time to go into the feminine. Rethink. And speaking of the feminine too, we talk about Regulus entering Virgo. That's more feminine power structure. Also, the whole Venus occultation, which I talk about in links to the videos below, that was our transition into the more feminine realm. We look at the recent conventions. This is the women are talking huge how they're going to be a huge part of this election, and I believe that completely and totally. That women energy, feminine energy, is a huge part of this election. So whatever that feels most aligned is where I think we're going to go in this vote. And right now, I mean, that very clearly leans toward Obama, because he's very clearly, at least on paper, aligned with women and women issues. I'm not completely convinced that he's the man for the job, okay? And we'll get into that, okay? With this Mercury retrograde, this kind of throws a monkey wrench into things, okay? So we go into this assuming the same old thing. It's going to be Republican, Democrat. If you vote for a third party, you know, like Jill Stein in the Green Party, or if you vote for Ron Paul, you're going to screw up your electoral system and all that, okay? The electoral system is on its way out, in my opinion. You know, that is completely based on the idea of us not being educated enough, us not being empowered enough. That needs to go. We really need to get into a popular vote, consensus kind of voting system, okay? And I think that's where we're going to be headed. You know, not exactly like it's going to get fixed right now for this election, but certainly from this point forward, we're going to realize how this election doesn't reflect the realities of where we're at now, and how it's almost like realizing that, you know, you're a 10-year-old and you're having to do the same thing you had to do when you were 4 years old. You're like, I kind of outgrew this. What are we doing here? Why are we going through this whole process? You know, there's nothing wrong with the process. It's fine for a 4-year-old, but it just doesn't really work for a 10-year-old anymore. And that's kind of where we're at. We're maturing. We're evolving. And so we need a system to better fit this evolution. And so that's where we're at in terms of voting, in terms of democracy, and that's what I feel like is coming. The only other, okay, so Mercury is retrograde for 3 weeks in November, pretty much the whole month of November. There's also 2 eclipses, eclipse on November 13th, eclipse on November 28th, right around Thanksgiving. Right after Thanksgiving, we kind of get on the other side of things even out. What I see happening, because Mercury's going retrograde, on election day, on Tuesday, at like 6 p.m. Eastern. So 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific. We're talking about, if you wanted to narrow down 1 hour during that day where the entire country as a whole is at its highest rate of voting, or highest voting density rate, we're pretty close around that time when Mercury decides to go to retrograde this time around. The only other time that Mercury has gone retrograde or gone direct on the day of an election was back in 2000. And this was the recount. Notice the word recount. This is when Al Gore wouldn't concede for a while. They had to go back and forth and back and forth. Expect that kind of shenanigan-like aspect for this election, okay? What I see is, because of all this empowerment, all this new knowledge, this sense of, why do we have to put up with this coming up, okay? And there's going to be, I think there's going to be some kind of screwy, like, attempt to stall a decision in the election, kind of like in 2000. It'll linger for a couple of weeks, but because of what we learned from the Occupy movement, the people are going to see right through it, right through the veil, and we're going to recognize it. We're going to call the bluff. We're going to organize, and we're going to get people on our side that know the laws, that know, you know, how to do this legally, and we're going to vote in someone potentially off ballot to represent our issues, what we want, okay? We're going to try this. It may not work the way we want it, because things don't always happen overnight, but I think this is going to be the birth of the new way, and it's going to introduce a new way. There's going to be some stalling and whatnot. What I feel like is that both candidates are going to have the opportunity to concede to the people, okay? I think Obama will concede first, okay? And Mitt Romney will not concede. He will take a while to concede, and that will reveal the character of who is really in line with the people. This is what I see. So I don't know how it's going to turn out. I just feel like there's going to be a stall, that both candidates are not going to be decided in right away, and that there's going to be an opportunity for concession to what the people want, and that by that concession, that might help the people make their decision. You see, like there's an episode of Seinfeld when Newman has to decide for Kramer and Elaine who gets the bike. You know, Elaine bought a new bike, but then she hurt her neck, and Kramer helped her with the neck, but she had kind of, in passing, said, "Oh, I'll give my bike to the first person that can fix my neck." Of course, Kramer fixed her neck, and Kramer says, "Oh, I'll take that bike whenever you have it." And then she's like, "No, you can't have my bike." She's like, "I didn't mean that." You know. So anyway, Newman has to decide who gets the bike, and his decision was, well, we cut the bike down the middle. And then, you know, Elaine says, "Well, you know, if that's how you want to do it, cut it down the middle." And then Kramer says, "No, I'd rather her have it than it be destroyed." And then Newman says, "Well, Kramer, only the bike's true owner would, you know, not want to see it destroyed." And it's the same kind of thing, you know that comes back. I forget, for like an old proverb or old an old wisdom from back in the day. I can't remember where they pulled that from in that episode, but anyway, you get the point. The point being that I feel like the people will feel the heart energy of the candidate that jives with them. So if a candidate, these candidates are not there for the people, they're there for their party. If we're there basically saying we're done with the parties and that we see through the veil, and this is where we're at now, I feel like, and maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like Obama would be the first to concede to the people and say, hey, you guys choose what you want. Whereas Romney would not do that. And I think he would be sticking to his party, sticking to the values of the party and everything, and that would really reveal his character as someone who's more aligned with the party and what it wants than what the people actually want. Okay, and that's my opinion. Again, it could happen any other way, but that doesn't mean that Obama will get elected president. You see, it's a weird situation. He may. If out of those two, I feel like just intuitively, because of this scenario I'm describing, I feel like Obama has a better chance. But I don't necessarily think that it's going to come down to those two. It might even be a woman. Like I said, the woman vote is huge here. Whether a woman is voted in off ballot or if it's on ballot, like Jill Stein, Green Party. I mean, here's someone who is a doctor who is very well versed in healthcare and what the problems actually are, might pretty much help in that realm. And I'm not saying she's going to get elected, but she's an option. And people are recognizing their empowerment to have their own options now. And who knows how it's going to turn out. I'm not concluding that she's going to be president or that anyone particularly is going to be president. I feel like the window is open and that it is not decided. The people are going to come to this conclusion on their own as a collective when the time comes. And that's only a couple months away here. But I just feel like I can see the window smashing open to possibilities that are way outside the box, way outside the norm, and things settling out. By about Thanksgiving, things settling out and us having an idea of where we're headed and who's going to be in charge of us as our president, whether it's a man, whether it's a woman, whether it's Obama, whether it could be Romney, who knows. But I feel like with the energy and how it is, it likely isn't. But this is how I see it happening. But I also see the people wanting to incorporate the ideas of other candidates that aren't in this two-party system, like bringing in Jill Stein as the expert on healthcare, bringing in Ron Paul as the expert on this audit that I think most, if not all of the American public really wants on the Federal Reserve. The knowledge is out there about money in our money system, whether you're Democrat or Republican. I think we all want this. And someone like Ron Paul might be a really good person to be in charge of that effort and to give him that effort, okay? So I just see this breaking down the system so that it has to be reorganized for the future from here forward. And something's going to happen out of this. Nothing's going to fall apart, and this is not going to destroy the economy. But our whole money system is going to go through a new, over the next couple of years, and what we decide is going to really get revamped. But it's going to be in a more empowering way. Again, we're going to be creating systems that are more empowering for who we are and where we are now, rather than for what existed before, which is based on assumptions that no longer are true. Okay, and so we're going to see currency change. We are. I don't see any of the fear-based kind of things coming where everything collapses. You got to have 3 days of water and this and that, and to survive. That survival of the fittest thing. That's a theory. And all the latest research in biology and everything shows that it's cooperation that actually yields survival, not separation. Okay. And so separationness, getting in your own separate bunkers and things like that, that's the worst way to go. That's what the research shows us. Darwinism, the idea of survival of the fittest was an idea of how evolution happens. It wasn't necessarily how evolution happens. I think evolution itself, in my opinion, is pretty clear that it occurs, but the mechanism that drives it, it's still up in the air. It's theoretical. Okay, and I'm certainly not convinced in survival of the fittest. And I think if we get away from our blue pill for a little while, get away from the news, the media, all the stuff that feeds us the fear to believe that we are savages that would kill each other. Every show is about us killing each other if we ever had a shot at it. We get the news that shows us the worst of things that are happening out there. But in reality, I think if things ever did fall apart completely, which I don't even think is really ever going to happen, but if it did, I think we would come together. And it would just prove, I look at the Grinch that stole Christmas as an example. You know, the Grinch assumed that, oh, I take all the presents away and everyone's going to be disappointed. And it's going to be this wonderful, great den of disappointment when we wake up. And to his surprise, everyone was just rejoicing at the day. And it was like, holy wow, what is that all about? You know, I can't believe that happened. And that's what I feel like would happen. You know, that's my opinion. If everything fell apart, we would all just come together and we'd actually realize, oh, why didn't we allow this to fall apart a long time ago? You know, now we're better off because we can reform systems very quickly because we can organize very quickly. Okay, so anyway, gotta wrap it up. So that's how I feel like the energy flow is kind of revealing itself over the next few months. I will do a follow-up video at the very least after Thanksgiving to kind of go over what's happened. Might do one between now and then, between here around Labor Day and Thanksgiving, to see how things are going. Not sure if I'll do that yet, but I'll definitely try to do one around early December, late November, early December, just to wrap things up. So thanks for sticking with me. Lots of info, I know. And again, take the best, leave the rest. You don't have to believe everything that comes through my mouth. You know, this is just how I see it, how I feel it. I'm speaking through the heart. That's all I can do. So again, thanks for listening. Again, Christopher Taylor, Sovereign Harmony, signing out.